Who is the best black wrestler in the world today? The Black Rasslin Podcast has released their top 3 for the year, and we are going to discuss it and more on today's episode of WrstlXtra. Stay tuned.
Oh, yo, this is a WrstlXtra, and as always, joined by my tag team partner, Gerard Bonner, the professor. Yes, you did see Mex, you weren't dreaming. He was here, he had to duck out, he'll be back with us as soon as possible. But as Mex said at the top of the show, Juneteenth has come a couple of days ago. And with Juneteenth, we have seen over the last few years, our friends over at the Black Rasslin Podcast have released the BR 50. I was about to say 500 then. I was going to say that's an achievement. 50, BRP 50 yes. Of the top 50 black wrestlers in professional wrestling over the last, I guess, year or so. So what's interesting is, Gerard, I'm not sure if they have yet or not. Have they released that final top 10?
No, they have not. I just checked. We're still up through 11. So we're 11 to 50.
No problem.
Yes.
So we've gone from 50 to 11 so far. They're giving it us in small doses. I don't think we'll be able to handle the whole 50 in one day. But they're being very clever with it, giving us in small doses. We've reached 11 at the time of this recording, at least. And before we get onto that, I did mention Juneteenth, and I wanted to give you the chance, Gerard. I know that with Juneteenth, it is Battle Slam did their thing as well over that time. Can you give me the scoop on what happened over at Battle Slam during Juneteenth, and what else happened over that day?
Certainly. Well, let me first make sure everybody knows what Juneteenth is.
Definitely
because I think there could be a lot of confusion. And in America, this is only the second year that it has been celebrated as a national holiday.
Yes.
So basically what Juneteenth is on June the 19th, 1865, the slaves that were in Texas finally found out that they were free. The problem with that is that there was a thing called the Emancipation Proclamation, which actually made them free 2.5 years earlier, January the 1st, 1863. Now, what we have to remember is back then, there was no, internet, there was no CNN, there was no way that they could immediately find out. However, by anyone's calculations, 2.5 years is an extremely long time. But the folks there in Texas used that time to celebrate. It should be noted that it was people from the North that actually let them know that they were free. So from there, they were able to start, doing some different things, though it was still a challenging period for them because many of them ended up still working for the same people who enslaved them. Because if you've never been free, where do you go? What do you have, to be able to do with it? But the whole point of the holiday is acknowledging that it is when kind of the last vestiges of slaves that did not know they were free discovered they were free. So that's why we celebrate it. So here in Atlanta, and all throughout the United States, there were lots of Juneteenth celebrations, parades, festivals, all sorts of things. So in Atlanta, there were many. One of them happened in downtown Atlanta. It was called the Juneteenth Atlanta, and it was the Juneteenth Atlanta Parade and Music Festival. Happened literally in downtown Atlanta in Centennial Olympic Park, where the Olympics were held back in 1996. And so Battle Slam had the privilege of actually being the only wrestling show that was there for that festival. We headlined the festival Friday night. We were also a part of the parade on Saturday and had live wrestling there on Sunday as well. The Friday night show was recorded for Fight TV, so you guys will be seeing that on Fight TV. I had the privilege of doing commentary along with Caprice Coleman. It was an amazing night. I don't want to give too much of it away. I'll just say there were some surprises, some very real surprises, and I went, wow, okay. But it wasn't lost on me. You know, first of all, I think you guys are going to love the aesthetic, because in terms of the hard camera in the background is, if you've ever been to Atlanta or if you've ever seen postcards of Atlanta, you've seen that amazing Ferris wheel that's in downtown Atlanta. So the Ferris wheel and all those things are on the back of the hard cam, but literally behind us when we were doing commentary is the CNN building, the same building that housed WCW. So the level of history that was involved in that moment this weekend was something that was absolutely incredible. It was amazing to be a part of. And yeah, I can't wait for you guys to see it.
Phenomenal stuff. Going back to the BRP 50, yes. Every single time 500 is in my head, I need to stop.
Prophetic, perhaps.
Excited. Yeah, prophetic. Yes. Hopefully.
Yeah.
And to shout out these guys as well, you know, this is the 5th year that they have done this. Yes. Just to do this for 1 year is phenomenal. To do this 5 years in a row is incredible. But one of the main things about this year's list was, and they've titled it, "The Rise of the Indies." Now I know, Gerard, you came across, I believe it was an article as well, of explaining, you know, the reason for this and what this whole rise of the Indies is about. Can you give us a little bit more insight on what that is and what they were trying to portray with this year's BRP 50?
Certainly. Part of what they were looking to convey with this particular article is, in fact, that a lot of the African-American talent that you were going to find on this BRP 50 this year had a great year in the independent circuit. I think one of the things that we were able to see is that, you know, pro wrestling itself has grown. And in terms of African-American representation, it's never been greater than it is right now. And one of the places where African-Americans really get to shine is in the world of independent wrestling. And so they talked about some of the promotions that have really highlighted independent pro wrestling, particularly African-American independent pro wrestling and pro wrestlers. Battle Slam was mentioned in that article, along with several other great promotions that have been doing a wonderful thing with that. But they did that kind of as a precursor to kind of inform people that if you're only paying attention to African-American wrestling talent in AEW or in WWE, the large national promotions, it is a strong possibility that you would not have experienced most of the talent that would be on this BRP 50. And having the opportunity to work in places like Battle Slam, like Southern Honor, and other places that have a lot of African-American wrestlers on the roster, I'm really able to see just indeed how this is true, how the independent circuit has been the place for the African-American wrestler to be able to shine, to do their thing, to build a strong following that in some cases could lead them to what many would consider the major promotions. In other cases, really give them a great opportunity to have a great living. I think so much when I talk about this, about AC Mack and how in 2022, he shook up the world, but he did it as an independent wrestler. You know, AC Mack, what many don't know is he wrestled in the very first match at the very first show for Southern Honor. He is a Southern Honor original, and he went on to win the IWTV World Championship last year, beating Alex Shelley, who is the current Impact World Champion. I think it's important to note that, right? And he was able to obviously represent the African-American community, represent the LGBTQ community as the first openly gay male world champion in the history of this business. Right. These kinds of things are happening on the independent level, and it's really changing the game and opening the door for African-American fans who want to see someone who is someone like them, like you have there in the background, the great t-shirt there that you guys can find in all the good places. But, you know, it's important that we see representation, and that article really told us and prepared us that the indies are the place that you're going to find a lot of this amazing talent.
And here's the thing: we have to give so much credit to the independent wrestling scene when it comes to our African American and even just black wrestlers in general, whether they be in the US, in the UK. I mean, there is no major promotion in the UK, so we're all independent over here.
Right.
In Europe as well, there's a few, and and other places. We have to give massive credit to the independent scene. I mean, if it wasn't for me finding these people on the independent scene, I wouldn't have the platform that I have now. But there was a point in time, let's say maybe about a year, 2 years ago, where it was almost the norm to see quite a few, or we saw a rise of black stars on the main rosters of of WWE, and of course at a point in AEW. You can argue that, but where a lot of our people were at the top of the card on a regular basis. The guys like the New Day, Bobby Lashley, Bianca Belair was kind of coming through at that time. And there was quite a few others. Kofi Kingston became the WWE champion. R-Truth was on TV every single week, and stuff like that. The Street Profits, and you had guys like Moose on Impact, which Swan was a champion at one point. You had all of these things going on. And now, as much as there are definitely in number much more African American wrestlers on the scene, whether that be independent or even on our TV screens, we've got the likes of Swerve Strickland on AEW, Ricky Starks, Scorpio Sky is making his return. Praise the Lord. And so many more on NXT. It seems as though these people, or our people, should I say, are not necessarily now in prominent positions on TV. Do you think that's the case? If it is the case, are we making too much of it because there's now more in number? Are we making too much or turning this into something it doesn't need to be?
I think it's an important observation to make because, if we're honest, even in the last couple of years, the representation for African Americans in these major promotions on the WWE side for the women has been one person, and that is Bianca Belair, right? When Sasha and Trinity, or I guess I should say Sasha and Naomi, left the WWE, also not only did their lights leave, but representation for Black women really left, leaving it only in the hands primarily of Bianca Belair. On the men's side of things, it's equally interesting because at one point, we had Lashley, we had Kofi, we had Big E, all of the New Day as separate entities. There was all of this talk about a potential Montez Ford singles push, and in the midst of that, the tag champions before the Usos got them, we saw the Street Profits as tag team champions. Things have an interesting way of ebbing and flowing. And part of what I wonder has happened on the WWE side has been, have they had enough people ready in the pipeline to be able to send people toward the main roster? So, for instance, nobody intended for Big E to get hurt. Big E gone for a year, right? Kofi Kingston gets injured. He's gone. Now all of a sudden we went from the tag team of the New Day fighting to keep their 483-day reign against the Usos. And now we're just down to, Xavier Woods. From there, Bobby Lashley coming out of WrestleMania. Well, actually, he wasn't even in WrestleMania. Then there's that, right? A guy who spent the previous two WrestleManias in pretty marquee spots ends up not on WrestleMania in 2023 at arguably the largest WrestleMania of all time. And then we really haven't seen him much on our television, certainly not since the draft. So it's been interesting. Now we're in a space where Bianca Belair is no longer the women's champion. And so in terms of on your Raw and SmackDown, of course, R-Truth got injured as well. So a lot of the names that you've mentioned have gotten injured, which it's a sport. It's what happens.
Right.
Part of the issue is you don't have anybody in the pipeline ready to come to the main roster. Now, if you turn on NXT, it's a much different conversation, you know, from Wesley as the, North American champion to, Carmelo Hayes as the NXT champion. You got Trick Williams doing his thing, and there's a lot of things happening in the NXT realm, even what's going on with Meta-4 right now, and the folks that are there. So the representation is stronger in NXT, but the fact that we're seeing that strong in NXT is telling us that, from a developmental perspective, it is not seen that those talents are ready to be featured on Raw and SmackDown, which is interesting. And I think it is a case of it being unintentional.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an intentional effort to keep us off of television. No. But I do think it's interesting in an era where we have brought back the LWO, where we've had a whole pay-per-view in Puerto Rico, and those kinds of things have happened. And Latino pride has been put, on full display for the WWE, which I have no issue with. It was, think about it. Backlash is a pay-per-view or a premium live event we really didn't pay much attention to. But you put that thing in Puerto Rico.
Right.
You put Bad Bunny there.
Right.
I really think it kickstarted things for Zelina Vega.
Yeah.
All of those things together, and we've got a situation, So I wonder, and this, we didn't even get to the AEW side, but if we did, we're looking at, at one point you had a Powerhouse Hobbs as your TNT champion. Of course, Jade Cargill, the long reigning TBS champion. We've yet to have an African-American AEW world champion. But if you look at most of the talent on the African-American side in AEW, again, nobody's in that main event picture. What we're seeing right now is sporadic. And even with Collision, Powerhouse Hobbs' name was prominently mentioned in the press release, but he got a backstage interview.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that was the bulk of the representation for us on Collision.
And there was a vignette of Ricky Starks, and that was
Ricky Starks, right? So, and I think he was talking about the Owen Hart deal, right?
Yeah.
So there's that. Here's a crazy thought. I can't even believe I'm going to say this. This is a crazy thought. The idea that we actually have more African-American representation in New Japan than we do on AEW or the main rosters of WWE right now is very interesting. Whether that be Mercedes Moné, Willow Nightingale, Kevin Knight, who is now a former IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Champion, Lio Rush. There was a moment coming into 2023 that we couldn't mention any of those names being featured on the main roster of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So I think it's an interesting time right now. I do think that injury has kind of plagued things on the WWE side, but it also makes me wonder, are we making any intentional efforts to ensure that the roster on screen reflects the fan base off screen?
In everything that you just said, there are so many interesting points we could probably even, pick at even more. Going to the whole NXT, WWE kind of, that scene there. As you mentioned, obviously we had the likes of Kofi Kingston, Bobby Lashley, Big E, all become world champions. Bianca Belair was on the rise and obviously had the long reign that she had as well. The Street Profits with their tag team stuff as well. And of course, we had the Hurt Business.
Yes.
That changed the game for so many months and it disappeared. But the interesting thing that you said was about obviously, with people getting injured, who was there to bring up? What's interesting is, of course, with NXT for, when it got its little, rebranding, there was this whole thing of not signing independent talent.
Right.
But what we have to remember is as well that made a massive difference because welcome back, Max. That made a massive difference because we had the likes of Swerve,
Yes.
Leon Ruff,
Yes.
Keith Lee, Ricochet, you know, and so many people who came through as known from independents that came then to NXT. And of course, Ricochet is now on the main roster. Swerve is in AEW as well as Keith Lee. But for a few years, or you know, for a few years ago, we never had that. I think the last person that we had was Carmelo Hayes, Christian Casanova at the time when he first signed. And since then, obviously, we've got the Neo program, or we're getting people from just different places and blah blah blah. And I think that has also had its effect on African American stars in prominent positions in the bigger promotions. As we've already said, the numbers, we can't argue the numbers. I think the numbers is absolutely fine, but I guess the argument would still be right. But where are they on the card? We mentioned AEW again, Swerve, Keith Lee, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs, Jade Cargill. So many names to mention, but yet apart from Jade Cargill, who only recently lost the championship, we had a little stint with Powerhouse. It happened for a little bit. There aren't many that we're kind of seeing that they're going to push further, or we don't know where they're going to go. It's like at this twilight zone. We can even look at Impact. We had Moose, Witch Swan, all champions. Now, you can argue they're in the championship picture because they were in that 8-4-1 match. But are they really? You know, were they there to just make up the numbers? Jonathan Gresham was in the match, and he was the main man for Ring of Honor. Now he's kind of, I guess, upper mid card in Impact. Things have definitely shifted a little bit. Again, injuries, how it goes. You know, sure, it's not intentional to keep us down, but it is very interesting to see how things have changed and shifted over the last couple of years. And if we don't pay enough attention to the indies, we're going to lose out on so much that we can be proud of.
So two quick things. One, I do think it's also interesting, as I was thinking, you know, there may have been somewhat of an attempt to try to help this in WWE by drafting Apollo Crews back, drafting Odyssey Jones, but they've not appeared on our television since the draft. So there's that. Caden Carter has appeared, of course, on television these last couple of weeks, which has been good. So there's that piece. But here's where I think this gets interesting. So you remember, of course, you mentioned about 2 years ago when NXT went through their rebranding, you know, WWE had made the statement that, hey, we're not looking to the independent circuit anymore. Lately, it feels as though that started to change with Carl Fredericks being, you know, brought in to NXT and the like. And now, you know, Nick Khan is saying perhaps NXT can be a third brand. That tune changing is very interesting. That's a whole nother show. But my concern is this, and I can't fully divulge why I'm saying what I'm saying, but I know this to be true. Part of the challenge we're going to have is if the WWE continues to decide that we're not looking at the independent circuit, and if AEW is full or has few slots available, the question for these athletes on the independent circuit now becomes, okay, how long will it actually take to be considered by the WWE and AEW? And if they are not realistic goals in the next 2 to 3 years, what else is there left for me to accomplish in this sport we call pro wrestling? So I am concerned that while right now we're not seeing this particular talent and it's not intentional, that we actually could be losing great talents who desire to be in these spaces, but because they're full, they won't get that opportunity. And if you're a wrestler depending upon your age, you now have to look to the future and say, okay, if WWE is not available to me in the next 2 to 3 years, and say I'm 30 years old, do I at 30, 32, 33 want to start in WWE, and go through that, which means potentially I may not be on the main roster until I'm 35, 36, 37. And then by then, is there a place for me? Do you understand what I'm saying? And so it's an interesting thing, and at some point I'll probably be able to talk more on air about exactly why I'm saying this, because I know this is happening, where the thought process is, all right, well, I have a goal, and my goal is WWE or AEW. If those don't look like realistic possibilities in the next 3 years, then do I continue to put myself out there right now in this space? It's a real question to ask. And I hope that it doesn't cost us African-American talent in these major promotions.
Mex, to come to you, we've seen the likes of Trish Adora, for example, who has held the how do I forget what the Pan-African Diaspora World Championship, right, for the longest time.
Yes.
Obviously, we've seen her appear on AEW, on Dark and stuff like that. ROH more recently, she was on ROH, before it was sold to AEW, very prominent spot in that women's division at that time as well. With someone like that, how long do you feel it should take for them to then be asked the question or given some kind of contract or some kind of answer as to what this bigger company sees in them when it comes to their future?
So, as in, the question you're asking is, when should AEW, she's ultimately under the AEW umbrella now, when should AEW commit to giving her a contract and giving her an opportunity?
Yeah.
It's one of those ones where it's like you have to. There's an element of timing in general in wrestling. I think we're all aware of that, and just taking the opportunity when it arises. To be completely honest, she I would say maybe aesthetically fits what AEW tend to kind of go for, and stylistically 100% fits more there. But someone in Trish's case, I actually think would get her opportunity quicker in WWE. I think in AEW right now, there is still very much in the works of that women's division and getting it to where it needs to be. I'm not here saying that WWE's is any better or managed any better or anything like that, but AEW, because the company's new, they're still developing that side of things. Ring of Honor with Athena as champion is kind of taking care of itself, and that could be like a bit of a safe haven for Trish Adora. But if she becomes Ring of Honor Women's Champion, it's great for the CV, great for the resume. But is that upwards move? Is that any closer really to even getting her a contract? She could probably accomplish that without being under contract, to be honest.
True.
So she needs the opportunity at the main roster, so to speak, on AEW, Collision or Dynamite. The TBS Championship would be a nice kind of stepping stone in between. That's a nice little division there for her to kind of work through, to kind of get her feet wet, if you like, for whatever the main event is for the women's scene in AEW. I think they can afford to give her a contract, someone that is so renowned and known across the indies already. What she's done with her title, like you mentioned already, someone that was a Ring of Honor staple before they died and came back to life. They can afford to. The only thing is, once they did that, still, how would they book her? Because, like I said, everything's up in the air. But someone like her, I honestly think she could go to NXT, put on some great matches with some of the ladies in NXT, and quickly become a fan favorite in NXT, and move on. I think one of the cheat codes to NXT is that you have that rabid, not rabid as it used to be, but still rabid NXT crowd, which is the same folks every week. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there is a growing black contingent in that crowd.
Yes, there is. Yes, there
Yes,
is.
there is.
I
Yes,
absolutely
yes,
love it.
Wonderful.
Maybe because the
Yes.
champion is black, maybe because there's more black
Possibly.
representation on that show. But there is a growing, or maybe black people just live in Florida. Maybe all three. Who knows? But
It's
like,
definitely all free. Definitely all
yeah,
Yes.
there is a growing black contingent in that crowd, and
And
someone
they're
with
vocal.
Trish, and they're very vocal.
Very
And with what Trish represents, especially, and I know it's open for WWE to tweak that and do whatever and ruin the character, but that could be, like I say, the kind of place for her to really thrive, put on some good matches, get that rabid crowd behind her, and you know, main roster at least, or some type of success in NXT with the women's title could be a better trajectory and a quicker trajectory than you know, waiting around in AEW and doing indies elsewhere and then coming back to AEW to do jobs. And yeah, I don't know if the AEW way for her particularly will be so quick.
Gerard, you probably have a lot more insight on this next question I'm about to ask. With the way this whole wrestling business works, not everybody makes it. And as you've already mentioned earlier, you know, there are most of these bigger companies, there's not many spots left. What do you think is the difference between Willow Nightingale, for example, getting her spot, to someone like maybe Darius Carter, for example, a guy from New York who's been doing his thing for the longest time, and never really getting that chance to go to any of these, you know, major companies or whatever else? What is the difference between the success and the not necessarily being noticed? What do you think the difference really is?
I don't think there's a silver bullet for this one. I think there are multiple things. One of the things I think has to do with desire. And here's what I mean by desire. Having had the opportunity to talk to a number of the wrestlers in these independent spaces, it's interesting because from a fan perspective, you would assume that everybody's ultimate goal would be WWE or AEW.
True.
But a number of these wrestlers actually don't desire to go to either of those places. And part of that is because one day we'll have to talk about the similarities between the wrestling industry and the music industry, extremely similar. And one of those similarities is the control of your content and your character as an independent artist versus as a signed artist. And in this case, substitute the word artist with athlete. When you are in a space like WWE, for sure, you may not get as much control over your character presentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. AEW, there still might be you might get a little more control over that, but still, for the most part, there's going to be somebody kind of directing the pieces to the puzzle. At an independent show, you get to be you get to build your brand, et cetera, et cetera. So some people aren't as interested in, or it's not as appealing for some to go to some of those places, because for them, they'd rather have control of their character and presentation. And if they string enough things along, they can make some pretty decent money. The other thing that I think is, oh, God, help me say this. The other thing that I think is so interesting with those two examples that you mentioned is one is more appealing to a larger and more diverse group. Another of those is very, very specific to one group of listeners or audience members. And I say that because it's not even, for instance, Darius is very pro-Black, which there's nothing wrong with, but it gets challenging presenting that kind of presentation in a place like AEW or WWE. If you'll notice, it's interesting. I've been watching lately, you know, some old episodes of Monday Night Raw from the Attitude Era, and I still can't believe some of the things that they were allowed to say, and even the way that we were presented. Go back and watch the things that the Nation of Domination said. Woo! You know, they said things, and because of the way we were programmed in '97, we booed those things. Those things today, we'd be like, oh my God, somebody said this. I can't believe they said this. So I don't believe in 2023 that either major company would be daring enough to put a pro-black, openly pro-black, in their character kind of presentation on their television screens. I think they think it might be too polarizing. You know, my goodness, think about this. Prior to the Donald Trump era of politics, the WWE always made sure that they had a presidential candidate on their show from both sides, you know, to show how connected they were to the mainstream culture. When Trump ran for presidency, all of that stopped. They were very, very specific about those kinds of things. So I think that's the difference between those two specifically that you mentioned, is one is more palatable in a larger space. You know, everybody loves Willow. She's fun. She's inviting. She has great theme music, happy-go-lucky, a much different presentation from, say, a Darius Carter. And that's not a knock to him. It's just saying that those two presentations will be received very, very differently with these large audiences.
And while I didn't use those two specific examples, you know, or those two examples specifically, I think it still kind of does highlight the difference in the success to the, you know, not so much success or getting into the major promotions. Success can be, you know, success can be whatever you want it to be honest. One in the successful one, it is being able to be open to change to whatever you're going to be given, whereas the other is so much more, you know, holding their cards close to their chest because they need to represent themselves in a certain way and a certain brand or whatever else, whether that be a pro-black thing, whether that be all about LGBT, whether that be, you know, wanting to be a technical wrestler. You know, all these different factors make the difference, which is very, very interesting. Kind of keeping on with the same topic, but moving our attentions a little bit to AEW and their debut of Collision. Mex, I know you keep your eye very close to AEW and stuff like that. We saw the likes of Will Hobbs in the backstage interview, Ricky Starks in a vignette. But do you feel as though AEW's Collision can possibly offer or should offer another avenue for African American talent in AEW to shine in some way, or is it just another show?
I think firstly, like in just a Collision in terms of a debut show was pretty good, very wrestling centric. Good to hear some new voices on commentary or voices we're familiar with from other places, but just a new commentary team, so to speak. Presentation, it looked brilliant. Looked like a pay-per-view. It's going to be kind of disappointing that it's just what you're going to get every week now because it looks bright and shiny and everything. Obviously, we saw Powerhouse Hobbs, which was advertised for the show, not as a match, this backstage segment. And there was even between the commentary that they were going on, like, you know, how come Powerhouse isn't having a match? And QT was very much, well, he was advertised for the show and not to have a match or whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. We'll see where this is going. I don't know why he's still running around with QTV or whatever they're called, but that's another topic. Ricky Starks had obviously declared that he's going to be in the Owen tournament, which I hope they do a lot more with and make it feel like a proper tournament. If it's going to be something they're going to do annually and kind of be their answer to something a bit more sports orientated. That can be good. I generally think that this is now make or break for AEW. I can't say, I don't know for any certainty, but I can't imagine they necessarily wanted an additional 2 hours. Maybe when they first set out and made the company, they were happy with what it was. The company grew, it's been growing fantastic, you know, great rate. And this is more money for them. So they're never going to turn it down. They've now got another 2 hours of TV, but with that will come its own issues. At the same time, Ricky Starks, Powerhouse Hobbs that you mentioned, even some of the other guys that have returned to TV now, Miro, Andrade. These guys, if they don't get their opportunity in Collision over the next 6 months, we may have the same mass exodus of 2021 that WWE had. A lot of these guys' contracts end next year. A lot of AEW talents' contracts end next year. So this is almost like 6 months. All right, let's see if you know, now you've got a whole nother 2 hours. Will you give me an opportunity over here? And if we, you know, we can get something cracking and it looks like I'm doing you get plans for me, and I can stick it out. If we don't, then, you know, I guess we can something to consider. I have said since the day AEW began, these guys do not know how to handle people. I think that's Wardlow, I think, is the greatest example of them all. That, you know, they try to put it back and forth. I worry for Powerhouse Hobbs in the exact same sentiment. It looks like just, you know, earlier this year when they had something there where it's like just go in a certain direction for him, you know, everyone's trying to get behind Hobbs, direction, through fans, TV stuff, it's greatest. Yeah, I just feel like that's one thing where maybe Powerhouse Hobbs might have his eye on the exit door, possibly. And, you know, Ricky Starks and any other of these other guys. Swerve, I expected Swerve to have a kind of big opportunity on Collision as well. That hasn't really, well, it's been only one show, but I thought that you would at least see it in the show. So we'll see how it will pan out for these guys. But so far, at least, you know, we all kind of made it to the first episode.
So we know that the savior of AEW, sorry, my savior of AEW, Scorpio Sky, is making a return. I just love that guy. I don't know what it is. I just love that guy. He's making his return. And all the things that you just said about, you know, it being, you know, it being do or die, I guess, for AEW over the next couple of months or 6 months maybe, in terms of how they use Collision and the rest of the shows. Do you feel as though Scorpio Sky will come back with a different vigor? Because as much as I was as much as I am a, you know, a big fan of him, it was clear and obvious that something just wasn't working in his last run. Yes, he became TNT champion. Yes, he was one half of the first ever AEW tag team champions. But there was something missing. Do you think it's important for him, not even necessarily AEW, but important for him to have something quite prominent for him to kind of be somebody, become something, you know, go to another level if possible? Gerard, go for it. Go for it.
I think it's imperative. Oh my God, I can't believe the things that happen in my head that I actually might say. Okay, so don't cancel me, guys, but I don't want Scorpio Sky to become AEW's version of Lacey Evans.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is they've taken Lacey off because she didn't connect. They tried something else with her. It didn't work. They tried something else with her. It didn't work. And, you know, I'm going to need him to find that thing that makes us want to watch him on television every week. Because, you know, seeing him, you know, so we were interested in Miro's comeback. We're interested in Thunder Rosa's comeback. We're interested in Andrade's comeback. I don't know that there's the same kind of, when Scorpio Sky came across my television,
there isn't.
I was just like, okay, we're taking this big Saturday night show that's being headlined by CM Punk, that's got 2 new commentary voices, that starts with a title change, and somewhere in here we throw in Scorpio Sky. He's going to have to do some, because here's what's bad. I legitimately didn't miss him. And so, you know, it's like, and this is the other challenge, I think, for all of the guys who are going to be on Collision. I feel like coming into Collision, AEW had started to finally find their groove. There were things that are happening. There are multiple stories that we're interested in. Collision has the opportunity to add some things to that.
Mm-hmm.
Now's the right time to get in, but you got to come in real hot. I don't know what I can't think off the top of my head of what he should do specifically to make us go, yes, we want that guy, but he's got to figure that out. Matter of fact, it's not up to us. He's got to figure out, why do I want to see Scorpio? Because at this point, all of those particular accolades don't mean a hill of beans. Frankie Kazarian isn't in AEW anymore, right?
True.
Like all of these things we're talking about, winning the Face of the Revolution. Okay. His TNT title reign, we forgot. So it's like, all right, so what are you going to do that makes us go Scorpio Sky, and you're more than an answer to a trivia question? That is what he's got to figure out.
And this is why I asked the question that I asked, because I'm worried that they've played this vignette and you're trying to big him up more than the fans actually care about, or you're trying to either force something, or it's just not going to go over the way you want it to. Maybe they have great intentions for him, but it may not work because, as you said, I guess the majority didn't miss him when he was on our TVs. There wasn't a point where he was doing anything where we really cared about. I think probably only for like the couple of months where he was feuding with Cody Rhodes, but he didn't actually win the TNT Championship. That was a bad move, bad timing, and I think that messed up a whole lot of stuff afterwards. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why I asked the question, because it's a fear now that you're doing this nice, beautifully filmed vignette, very well done, but that's all it feels like it's going to be. And then what? Mex, I'm not yet. You're itching to say something. Go for it.
Hey Dazzle, let me talk to you. Yeah. You got me on this Scorpio Sky train back in 2020, 2021, right?
Yep.
I liked what I saw. I'd seen his work before AEW. I liked what I saw. They became tag team champions very quickly, early AEW. After that is when he began to fade into obscurity once they lost those titles. Done a lot of good work on Dark, got an opportunity on TV again. The TNT stuff didn't come to fruition, no matter how many times we wanted it to come to fruition. I think that is the first point. I know we wanted him to become TNT champion off the back of Cody. I don't know how many other people did.
Right.
That's the first thing, right?
Right.
Then he managed, to find a way back to TV through the America Top Team. Is that what they were called?
Yes. That's right.
They were kind of held together by Dan Lambert and, what Dan Lambert was doing. He became TNT champion. Probably one of the worst runs, between him, not just on him, but between him and Sammy Guevara and the America Top Team stuff is where a lot of us lost interest in the TNT title, which they're somewhat trying to repair ever since. And since then, I think he was injured and he hasn't come back to TV. Obviously, like you say, now it's on Collision ads. You have every right to be scared, because if you like Scorpio Sky, then of course you'll want better for him. I'm letting you know now, the train I jumped on in 2020, I'm off the train. I'm sorry, respectfully, I don't care. I don't care anymore. I don't feel like I've been made to care. And with the vignette, like you're saying, Gerard, like he has to find something, a new character. There has to be something. I don't think anyone will care. That's the problem. Regardless of whatever it is. He could be like a good babyface wrestler that comes out and puts up a good title challenge against an OC or someone else and loses and, goes back to catering or wherever, the office for another 4 weeks and gets rolled out again for another title defense. Like, he could be that guy. The heel stuff, I don't think anyone will buy it. And the fact of the matter is, again, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible. These aren't Scorpio Sky problems or me having a jab at him. This is just obviously the setup and everything that's gone on there.
Of course.
I think Scorpio Sky represents early AEW. And AEW has moved on leaps and bounds from that initial roster, the initial look, the presentation, what they were trying to achieve then. Like this is right now, you know, that they went from the alternative to being, okay, we're trying to compete with WWE here. So yeah, I just don't think there's a place for him. And apart from A-Dazzle, I don't think anyone's going to lose so far.
Here's the scary thought that just hit me as you were talking, Max. And when you said it, it clicked. Part of our other problem here is Scorpio Sky seems to be best when he's paired with somebody. Whether that was part of SCU, America's Top Team, the stuff he was doing with, you know, All Ego, Ethan Page, like he was always paired with somebody, and those were the times that we remotely cared. Him being by himself, oh God, it sounds so bad. It sounds so bad. Nobody eats ketchup by itself. I don't want to be cruel. Nobody eats ketchup by itself.
Wow.
You don't see anybody going, yo, I can't wait for that ketchup. But if I put it on a hot dog, the hot dog's better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have here.
Wow.
We have a scenario where you're trying to make us care about ketchup. And we don't care.
No hot dog, no burger, no fries, no nothing.
Right. You know, Booker T says, you know, no milk, no water, no juice, just meat. We need meat. We need meat. Oh, yeah. We need meat. And I think that's our problem. No offense, no offense. But everybody can't be the meat. Somebody's got to be, you know, the accompaniment
and,
here.
Hopefully we can come off this conversation because my heart hurts. But no. To be real, I agree with everything that's being said. To be fair, and there are. I think that's the case with so many different people. Just within wrestling in general. I was going to say in AEW, but that can be said with so many people in WWE as well. That they may have promise, but at the same time, unless you know what to do with them, or some people, you just have to have something special to do with them before it can actually work. There are some people you can just put them on TV and you're good to go. As we reference LA Knight, you can put him on TV. He doesn't have to do a thing, and he's just got it. You know what I mean? Some people have just got it like that. Whereas with a Scorpio Sky, yes, he may have great potential, great abilities, and great so-and-so, and he's done this before, and he's done blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But you have to work it so correctly for it to be undeniable. It's very difficult to do, and he just falls into that category. But yes, let's move away from this. I want to talk about NXT Gold Rush as quick as possible. NXT Gold Rush is, we saw the first week of a 2-week special NXT Gold Rush where every title in NXT is going to be on the line. We've seen a few of them on the line already, and also a number 1 contendership match for the NXT Tag Team Championships, won by Idris Enofe and Malik Blade, which is great. They'll face Gallus next week. We also saw our African-American champion, Wesley, take on a friend of mine from down the road in Tyler Bate. He literally only grew up like 30 minutes away from where I live. Which is phenomenal. I absolutely love it every time I hear him speak. I'm just like, hold on, I know that guy. We saw a very crazy match between Lee and Bate with Mustafa Ali as the special guest referee. It started off quite interesting with Ali doing quick counts for the pins and then reverting to very slow counts. The match carried on. It was quite competitive between the two, as you would expect with both guys involved. The ending for me, though, was a little bit, I don't know how to put it. Mex, shed some light on this for me. What did you think of this ending for this North American Championship, and where could it possibly go with these 3 guys involved?
Yeah, I don't know if Wesley meant to hit his what's he called it? The
cardiac kick.
Cardiac kick.
I didn't know if he meant to hit that on Ali. Was the story that he wanted to tell, and then Tyler Bate got hit and he's like, okay, let me just pin him. I'm not too sure. I liked Ali's involvement on it, like in the whole match though. Like that was class. Like the reaction from the live crowd when they saw the first quick count and then everyone just looked up like Ali, like, what are you doing, sort of thing. Like even Wes that was meant to be selling that I'm being pinned, I'm dead, sort of thing. And then he just got up like, what's he doing there? Yeah, that was class. And then Ali's whole involvement in this was really good. I think they haven't had the triple threat match, these three, yet for this title, have they?
Right.
So that could be, where they're going. You've got the Great American Bash coming up, so that could be, the place that hosts this. The finish of itself of this match was a bit kind of confusing to me, also, but I guess it is just to kind of extend the story and see where we can go with this.
Gerard, what did you make of Wesley's performance, and of course, Mustafa Ali's involvement?
Yeah, I echo all of what Mex said. Wesley was incredible, as he always is, and it's fun to hear people referencing him as the greatest North American champion of all time,
to hear that,
because it is very true. So that's awesome. And I thought his performance was great. The Ali touch is special because you couldn't quite tell what was going to happen coming in,
right.
And so now you're like, So here's another case, going back to He Who Shall Not Be Named, who we just spent 15 minutes talking about. Ali is a great example of how you make somebody care about someone we didn't particularly care about. He had the whole retribution thing, which seemed like it was cool, but it didn't really turn out. He had a couple of other things he tried. Then he became a free agent. He gets to NXT, gets in this space, and in this one match, we're like, oh, I want to see where this is going. So I think that is the kind of example with what Ali did that needs to happen, that moves you from being ketchup to meat. And Ali proved that in a great, great way last night at Gold Rush.
Definitely. Also at Gold Rush, we saw, as I mentioned already, Idris Nofe and Malik Blade won the number one contendership for the NXT Tag Team Championships. We also saw Jakara Jackson and
just on before we get to those two. Sorry, I just wanted to say on Anafe and Idris Anafe and Malik Blade. Once I saw them win, I had a feeling. I said these two are going to beat Gallus. I just have a feeling that over this Gold Rush, there's going to be a title change. I thought this, and then literally just when you said it the first time, as we just got into this segment, I said, "Hold on, Stacks Lorenzo kidnapped
Sure
Joe,
did.
What's his face?
Sure did.
Joe Coffey.
Joe Coffey.
Yeah.
He might cost Gallus the tag.
Certainly might.
Right.
I'm now firmly in the camp. Them man are winning next week.
Right, you know what?
I'm
when
with
you put it like that, because you know what? When they first won, I thought, okay, this is going to be nice for them to get to have a championship match. Blah blah blah. They're not going to win, but it'd be nice for them, probably get them over a little bit more and blah blah. But when you think as well, not even just the whole Gallus story, even their own little story that they've had going on over the last number of weeks, where they've had a little bit of conflict and they kind of made friends again, and now they've won this match. It would be nice to then cap that off with a tag team championship win, even if it was in an indirect way with someone else having to be involved and whatever else. So that should be very interesting. The other thing that's happening next week is, of course, Carmelo Hayes will take on Baron Corbin for the NXT Championship. The reason why I'm mentioning these two is because their little back and forth was great. I thought it was amazing. With Carmelo Hayes, with the whole I built the windows here, and I had to build a new roof because I've blown it up so many times. I literally went, woo! And you know what? The response from Corbin was amazing as well. It was nothing fancy. There was no big fight. All the rest of it was just, listen, mate, I'm going to come, be better than you, take your title, sit down with my hot wife at home, and said this was a good day. It was just phenomenal.
You know what I felt when I saw this promo? For me, in the moment, I very much thought there is Seth Rollins and Bron Breakker main event in this, and Carmelo is basically doing I don't care. I'm the champion here.
Right.
So at least if I ain't getting the main event on this show tonight, like this is me doing my show out moment. Because of course, new eyes are gonna watch because Seth Rollins is on the show, so new eyes are definitely watching NXT on the night. I really just thought Carmelo's like, this is my show. I'm grabbing it by the neck, and you lot are gonna watch the segment. I'm gonna love this segment because neither of them are really known as promo guys as such, but they delivered a fantastic promo segment between them.
It was phenomenal. Gerard, what are your expectations for the match? Does this promo make you more excited for the match, or was it just a one-off kind of this was a great promo? Still not overly fussed about the match.
No, it makes me excited for the match, and this might sound strange, but I think the one winning in all of this right now is actually Baron Corbin. You know, Corbin is somebody, this is now a theme for the second half of the show, that we didn't necessarily care a whole lot about, and they tried a lot of things with him. Coming to NXT for him, and then us hearing him say things we hadn't heard him say, his $1.8 million house, all of that stuff. I was like, who knew? I had no idea, So I think we now get to see elements of Corbin and it's funny because somebody's got to lose a title in this Gold Rush. At one point I thought, are we going to put this strap on Baron? But now that we've got the tag title situation happening, I definitely think, again, Carmelo's going to show that he is him. But I think they've done the right things to get us interested in this, because that battle of words was pointed. I mean, when Carmelo came back and was like, at 26, I won the breakout tournament. At 26, you got cut from the Cardinals. Eek.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, whoa.
And he said, he was very like, I didn't want to go there.
Right. Like, I was trying not to. I had this bullet in the chamber. I didn't want to pull it out. But since you pushed me, that's the kind of stuff that we like to see. And it moves us from saying this is a promo to, oh no, y'all are going for it. This is the kind of argument you have with somebody that you genuinely disagree with. So I like this. I think they both did the things that they need to do. And we're tuning in next week for that main event for sure.
On the last point, I think even just what we're talking about with Baron Corbin, with Mustafa Ali, kind of can encompass like the whole conversation of today's show in the sense where Ali and Corbin seem to be able to have more control, or somewhat of some kind of control over the way they are portrayed since they've come to NXT. We're hearing, as you said, Gerard, we're hearing a bit more of Baron Corbin, the man that is Baron Corbin, in his promo. Ali seems to be doing stuff that kind of comes natural to him, and things like that. So, it shows the difference between being on the big show to being on the third brand, as they're trying to kind of push it again. And I think as well, that's the difference when we go all the way back to the first conversation that we were having, in terms of some people wanting to be on the big shows and some people preferring to still be very happy and staying on the indies for a very long time and making their names and brands known down there. It's different for everyone. It works differently for everyone. I'm sure both Baron and Mustafa Ali want to be back on the main roster at some point, but I know for a fact they're enjoying the ride in NXT. Guys, with that said, this is the end of our show. You've been watching WrstlXtra on the WrestleManiac UK YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe and find out when this guy Mex does his reactions to also all things WWE, AEW, and anything else in between. You can find him on WrestleManiac.uk on Instagram, WrestleManiac UK on Twitter. You can also find this guy, Gerard Bonner, on all things on Bonafide. You can also find him on the Faction Show, Nightmare Factory, Battle Slam, which is coming back again soon on Fight TV, WWT Live, and I don't know if I missed that. Oh, Southern Honor Wrestling. Come on, how do I forget that? Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. You can also follow me, A Dazzle, Black Wrestling Alliance on Instagram, and BWA Dazzle on Twitter. Guys, this has been our show. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time.
See you there, guys.